I'm Becky Katan, this is MakingLARP, and I'm finally going to tell you all about the Lions Winter Parliament. I'm sorry for the bit of delay in getting this video up. Essentially straight after the event I then went on 2 weeks holiday, and if anyone has gone to my personal channel and watched my video about the Welcome to Night Vale show in London, you can see the recording quality just isn't up to my normal standards here. So I wanted to wait till I was back home. I've got to admit, the Winter Parliament was a weird one for me. The event itself seemed to be done pretty well. The site was really great, though I know a lot of people have said that they wish we'd used more of it. We actually had the whole of Huntley Wood booked out. We mostly used the main hut and areas around it, as unfortunately those sections where we did go out and do anything else, quite a few of us that tend to stay back struggled. I fell on my backside, which was great. Didn't really work out very well. But other than a few complaints about how much site we had compared to how much we used, the site itself was fantastic. The hut that we used was in really great condition. It's a fairly new site, so that was good. There was plenty of space for everyone to pile inside when it got quite cold. There weren't any bunks or anywhere for people to sleep, so we did the sensible thing and booked a hotel. I must say that is one of the downsides. The hotel itself was perfectly fine, but it was half an hour away, so we ended up kind of missing a few bits and pieces of the events. I know myself and Emma went home quite early on the Saturday night because we were getting quite tired. To be honest, we were in bed by 10 o'clock. Obviously time out's not till 2, so we felt a little bit bad that the guy that drives us, who had also picked up more people to drive to the hotel, had to kind of basically take an hour out of his game to do that and then come back and do the drive all over again after timeout. So once again, this video is dedicated to Steve, who's wonderful for putting up with all this nonsense. So I can't tell you much of a perspective from the monster side of things. I don't know if Emma will ever post videos of that sort of stuff on her channel. She did again choose to monster rather than play the Parliament event. She was not very well, which didn't help things at all, and she spent a lot of the time sleeping, which is her usual way when she wasn't actually monstering, but she did seem to enjoy the actual bits of combat she was doing, and I believe she had a couple of roles where she really enjoyed like terrorising the players. So onto the event itself. We timed in probably a couple of hours after timing on Friday night by the time we'd got down to the site and got kitted up. It was my first time playing my new character, the damsel. So I'm not sure how much of the low-key feeling I had was due to not getting us stuck in with stuff because the character still hadn't worked out her place in the world, and how much was the event itself. I'm leaning towards the side of the damsel being a little bit unsure about things at the moment. I did have some really great conversations with a few characters over the evenings of Friday and Saturday, getting to learn things as the character is based around the concept that she has not actually been active in the world. She's been sat in a dungeon somewhere for about 100 years, so things like cataclysms, which have changed the way things work, conveniently so that I don't have any OSP skills, not that line itself in any way, that realistically the character should have. So, for example, I had quite a lot of fun because she's going down the alchemy route of saying, well, yes, you know, I know that I was, immune to alchemical poisons, but it's really the sort of thing you want to test in a safe environment if it's all changed. And that sort of stuff to kind of fluffily deal with stuff that I am planning on buying with my OSPs as soon as I can spend them, but don't have at the game. The other big drawback I had is, as much as I'm not a fan of combat, the fact that I didn't have an IC weapon at all made me feel really left out. Basically, there was at some point only 2, maybe 3 of us who literally did not even walk out and follow the rest of the group. to get involved with stuff on a night time. And I don't like night fighting at the best time because I can't see in the night, and I'm not the biggest fan of combat. The fact that I was completely unarmed meant that I wasn't actually really willing to leave the huts, and I had a few good conversations with people that had stayed behind, but there was really, I think, at most 3 at a time of us. So I just, again, with the character not really knowing anyone, it was all just a bit awkward. I was also one of the team that volunteered to pot wash. The Lions do a system where you can pay less money and you basically sign yourself up to do all the washing up of the cooking supplies and things like that. To be honest, I didn't find it too bad. It didn't really cut into my roleplay time, but I did feel quite guilty because we were staying at the hotel and I seemed to have missed most of the breakfast washing up and having missed the Saturday night because we literally ate dinner and then took Emma home before she collapsed. I did feel a bit bad because it turns out some other people had ended up doing it, so I kind of tried to do as much as I could while I was there. There were a few complaints. The other people, because they knew there were pot washers, were just not washing up things like plates and bowls and stuff. And I was a little annoyed that despite the event pack having said that you had to bring your own plates and bowls and everything and they wouldn't be provided, most people didn't seem to have actually brought any. And so there were the supplies from Huntley Wood itself, which luckily there were some, but if they hadn't been there, what did people expect was going to happen? And a lot of that, I know I ended up washing up Saturday. I ended up washing up Sunday before we could leave, and a lot of stuff, you know, Em even got stuck in with washing up Sunday so that we could get going. We would still pot wash at next event again. If nothing else, it's an excuse to stand in salve for a couple of hours in hot water over the course of the event, and the break to get warmed up is never a bad thing. It was a very low-key event for me. Friday there were some combat type stuff happening out and around the huts. One of the big things that happened was that the event was under a special effect. As in character, we had gone to take back an island that had been stolen by an illusion demon. When we turned up, we were scattered. So people that were in one transport group with their friends, that whole transport group might be split up over the island and arrived in different locations, mixed in with people from a completely different transport group. There was one person that didn't make it through the main section, which was Scraps from Squad D, who didn't make it back to the hut. However, I am reliably informed that this was a planned killing off of the character. So while it was quite upsetting to players, whilst it was quite upsetting to characters, it wasn't particularly upsetting to the player as she planned it out. So when I actually arrived, I arrived with a few of my friends from the company who had also just about got themselves ready for timing at the same time as us, and we picked up Zachary from the Alchemist Guild to take along with us to the hut, and we were luckily very close. I think they were being quite sympathetic to the fact that one of the people in our group had recently had knee surgery and so wasn't really supposed to be doing loads and loads of running around, and as well that pretty much everything else was timed in. So we did that, sat and had talks and conversations with people, fought a few illusion demons. Jobs are good. And the next morning, the main thing that we did was where we went off to do a rite to reforge a wonder, specifically the wonder connected to the island. The islands themselves were being tainted by the fact that there was illusion demon on it, and we were concerned about the use of the wonder being used against the island or used against the lions. So the plan was to kind of remove all its energy and potentially reforge it, but we didn't get reforging done this event. There was quite a lot of walking around and dealing with fighting for that. I have to say my costume was probably not the most practical for walking around long distances. I had a blue dress, which hopefully you're seeing a picture of now. over which I had self-made armour. Both of these are from a Simplicity pattern. Leather. I had intended to sew it, but the machine was playing up and I just didn't have time. If you can see from the bottom of the skirt, part of it, there's some sections that aren't riveted all the way to the bottom, because again, I didn't have time. I was actually putting rivet in 5 minutes before the car to take us to the event arrived. So it was the dress with this over the top, and one sleeve like this, and the other with only, I think, one of the sections in, because that was the last bit I could get done. As you can probably tell, the sleeve itself gave out, so it's only attached to one side. So I will be again redoing them for the Mark II version of the armour. The armour itself was actually pretty comfortable. There are things I would like to do. I would like to fix the eyelets in this section. I actually had to add this blue strip because I ran out of the normal leather, the suede, the green stuff, literally a couple of days before the event, and I have lots of the blue stuff, which was going to be part of the costume anyway, but I didn't have quite enough leather to do all of the sleevey bits, so I ended up adding the blue stuff, and so I just added a bit onto there to tie the colours together. The theme for the character is blue and silver and green and gold. She's a fae, so she has facial markings of her glamour, which was one of the other downsides of my event, was that the silver and gold eyeliner pencils that I had for doing her glamour didn't really work. I'd got 6 colours of pencils in a sale at Claire's Accessories. It had, I believe the other 2 were pink and black, or red and black, and then it was green and gold, blue and silver, and obviously red and black. So my plan was to kind of do like a balance fae. So a lot of her glamour and her colouring and things I'm going to be adding to the costume later, like embroidery, are all based around sun and moon themes. So the blue is like a darker blue, or representing sky, and so the silver was supposed to go with that and be like the moon and stars, but it just didn't really show up. I've actually since bought another set of eyeliner pencils for the metallic colours, and I'm hoping they'll work out a bit better. And obviously the green and gold, sun and grass. So that's kind of the theme I'm going with her, because I haven't really been told anything otherwise by plot, so I'm just playing around and maybe that will turn out to be a thing. So the armour does need some definite repairs, but was actually pretty comfortable. And to be honest, once the bodice is laced, it could stay up without the shoulder straps, but it adds points to your defence on your arms if I have them, so I would really quite like to get that sorted. And it was quite of a faff kind of keeping the bits that were half attached, places that weren't causing problems. I'd also say the sleeves of my dress were too long. Not so much when I was wandering about, but obviously wearing it whilst trying to help out in the kitchen, washing up, was not the greatest. And in fact, most of the time I ended up just like pretty much stripping off my kit, because I had leggings and a t-shirt underneath for like going around in the car, just taking the dress and everything off, which again is another faff that I didn't really want to have to deal with. So I will be doing more of the armour. I do have process photos that are going to be turned into videos for making the costume, and I'll surely have a second set of Mark II and kind of detailing any changes I do make. So that was one of my negativity events, the armour falling apart. As in character, pretty much the only thing I could use was bandages. I did also nick Emma's bandolier full of bandages that she bought at the gathering, and was wearing that in character as well, and that in a little pouch full of like random bits and IC money and stuff was all I had. So they did the thing with the wonder, and basically I stood around and followed people I did do a little bit of positioning. Positioning is the skill that lets you check if someone's got conditions and basically triage people to people, and that's about it. And hung out with the cripple crew. And we got back to the huts and I just hung out with people. I had some really great in-depth conversations hanging out with Callio, who is one of the members of the company's family. She is currently trying to understand the Lion's stance on things like unliving and demons. So whilst I wasn't getting directly involved, hanging around near her whilst conversation was happening actually got me a lot of information, some of which I didn't even get to learn as Mistress Hollow, which, especially when it's conversation about ancestors, it was quite interesting to me, finding out why the faction believes what it does, why other factions stands different. The main other faction that came and helped us with the event was the Jackals. So they have a very different stance on unliving, for example. They believe that they are useful tools, that people, basically, you either become an unliving because you want to be an unliving, and that's your choice, and they don't really object to that. I believe they view it as a form of, they generally use it as a form of indentured servitude. So basically, you take a big pile of money in order to give to your family and then go be unliving working on the pyramids because no mortal could deal with that. The Jackals are based around kind of Egypt, Greece, that sort of concept. Egyptus is one of their main areas. So, for example, you could become an indentured servant and do it for a pile of money, or you commit a crime where your sentence, the crime is so heinous that your sentence would be more than you could be reasonably expect to live. You will be raised so that you carry out your sentence, is the two main ways to do it. And in fact, the kind of high priestess that I dealt with most of the time in character is one of the people, she's a necromancer. It's mostly her job in character to go around and lay people to rest when it's their time is up, whether they've finished their contract or they finish their sentence and it's time for them to be laid to rest properly. That's kind of her job, and I never really had it explained to me that way as to what they actually thought. I knew they used them as tools, but kind of a lot more of the background details were laid in, and we also had some in-depth conversations about ancestors and worships and demons and how they work and all sorts of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy in character. I just felt like I didn't get as involved as I'd like to. I was being very prim and proper, as is my role. And I think perhaps had we had the space like the company tent, where it was a lot more relaxed and a lot more family feeling, that I possibly would have got stuck in a little bit more. On Saturday night after we left, there were two characters that died. One was a member of the Free Blades, I believe called Marv, and the other was Matthias, who was a long-standing member of the Lions and the Lions military, and was basically acting as second command at the event. So they got dragged out in a battle line. Again, I wasn't there, so I don't know the details, but people had not been able to get to them in time and they died. But over the course of the event, only having lost 3 people was actually really good. Sunday was the big Tatlas fight. Apparently there was a bit of a faff with actually finding him. As I said, I ended up staying at the hut with other people that were kind of non-combat and basically helping out in the kitchen and just talking to people. But it sounds like from the scouting people that they were having some trouble actually locating where the combat needed to happen so they could direct the players to it, which was a kind of mix of in-character and out-character communication issues. But it happened in the end, and because the Lions had already dealt with Mind, they in fact paid for or had researched a blade venom of really high level like demon bane that was so poisonous to a demon that it would mean they had to have a ritual done on them, I believe within 5 minutes. And a ritual rather than a rite, so they needed a full-on ritual team in a ritual circle, which I don't think the island even had. Otherwise they would die, and there's some argument whether they would be subject to the normal rules of when they can come back, or if it would destroy the pattern utterly. But was specifically, because the lions were involved in this, not pattern corrupting. I had quite a lot of discussion about exactly what the lion's rules on poisons are, and not pattern corrupting is one of the big ones. And that generally, if you're poisoning someone, that it's assumed that you're trying to commit murder. Fair enough. That just means don't get caught. So, in fact, the lion's high alchemist was the one that killed Tantalus, because he was the one with the knowledge to put on the blade venom and go stab him up. I believe there might have been some help in getting Tantalus to a position where said poison could be applied. And for those that followed him, Tantalus in fact went off into a corner and cried, openly wept, that all his plans had been ruined, which sounded amazing. There were a couple of other little linears, but I didn't go on them, so I'm not going to try and get all the details right. Though I do know that there was a creepy village where people went, and the villagers basically went, well, you guys abandoned us to Tantalus, and he said if we serve him, you know, he'll leave us alone. So we're doing that, because the lions abandoned us. And then on cue, by a demon guy, all turned en masse and attacked the people that had come there. And apparently could have got quite nasty if a runner hadn't gone back and fetched the faction to help. I know that was one of Emma's favourite roles to play, to do that and get to kind of rant at people. So that's my summary of the Lions Winter Parliament. As I said, I think the event itself probably went amazing. I just didn't really get involved in any of it. So one of my big goals before the Spring Parley next year is to get a proper IC weapon for this character and to have some serious weapons training. Whilst I never intend that I'm going to be a frontline combat monkey, and will probably spend most of my time in character at mainline events talking to people, the fact that I just couldn't get involved at all because I had no magic and no potions yet and no scrolls to invoke with, and just felt like I couldn't do anything, almost certainly comes down to the fact that I was completely unarmed. So I've already been looking at places that do custom weapons, or that do weapons that are suitable, and getting ideas, and I'm going to have to buy one by the Spring Parley if I'm going to go. And so I can get stuck in a bit more. Thank you for watching. I will hopefully have some design videos and process videos for the armour up soon. In the meantime, please go have a look at my personal channel, which is Rebecca Catan, where I talk about things that I do non-LARP related, and it's also the host for any gaming Let's Play videos that I put up on Twitch. Bye! So that's the basics on the damsel. Dun dun dun.